Good morning. So this is a free workshop through the Life Coach University using their Pay It Forward program or platform. Um, so what we ask is that you think about how you want to pay it forward. Please think of how you can be intentional about paying what you learn here, not necessarily the material, but the thought, the intention onto somebody else. Um, and think of what you do as basically part of a ripple effect. So we have the Pay It Forward platform, and I, as a coach, am part of that ripple effect, and you get to carry it forward by doing some kind of kindness for someone else. So thank you for that. Um, Good morning. And what I wanted to go over today is the abundant educator, an oxymoron. So a couple of things is how to use the Q&A, first off and foremost. So this is more of a technical issue. So for the Q&A, you can use it to let me know what type of educator you are. Yeah, what type of educator are you? And then if you have a specific question, please type in caps question and then the question. So then I can keep track of when the questions come up. How do I minimize that? Okay, there we go. This is my first time using Zoom for a webinar. So, okay, there we go. So that the questions catch my eye, but I'd love to know what type of educator are you? Okay, so the goals for today are going to be, I have 5 goals for you to get from this webinar today or this workshop today. So number 1, you will gain a sense of self-awareness of how a lack mindset sets you up to be in lack. And then you will understand how this mindset was created. Where did it come from? And gain insight into what this will look like or what this looks like in your own life. And what we often call these things or these thoughts, these ideas are called limiting beliefs. The next thing is I want you to know the difference of what a lack mindset and what an abundant mindset would look like given the same type of circumstances. And then learn the availability of the tools to help you shift your mind out of a mindset of lack and towards a mindset of abundance. And the other thing I wanted to go over today was, who is this workshop for? Well, in general, I think anyone can benefit from learning the difference between a lack mindset and abundant mindset. But specifically, this workshop is for you if you are an educator, so like a K through 12 teacher, a higher educator, like a professor, or a tutor, anything in the educational mindset sector. And you're looking to create more income. All right. So I have some examples of what this might look like in your life, right? So have you tried guest lecturing? Have you tried MLMs, right? You are a mom and you love to do social activities. You signed up through an MLM because your friend or you went to an MLM party and you signed up, you love the product, you're selling it, and you are loving selling the product, but you're probably not building much of a team, right? You're just creating some kind of income off of what you sell. Tutoring. You tutor some local students, whether it's university or K through 12. And you do this maybe a couple of times a week, a couple hours a day to make some extra income. You teach summer school. You have tried being department chair, or you are department chair. You have tried adjunct teaching. You have tried or been encouraged to write a book. So if any of these apply to you, this is definitely your place. And even if this doesn't apply to you, I mean, you've tried some other methods. This is the place for you. So what this looks like in your life, right? So maybe you qualified yourself. Yep, I'm one of those. I've tried one of those. Or multiple, multiple of those types of side hustles. And this is what it looks like in your life right now. You're hustling and you're exhausted, and you don't even have time to enjoy the fruits of your labor. You make enough to pay for the extras, but you never really feel like you actually have extra. The side hustles, right? They're not actually what you thought they were going to be. You thought they were going to be fun, and you thought they were going to take a little bit of time, but instead they've become necessary, right? And it feels like a heavy commitment, just as heavy as your job as an educator. And loving what you do doesn't pay the bills for the things you love to do. And you feel like you have to justify the things that you want from your side hustle, right? So it might look like I don't make enough, but we'd love to take one vacation a year, one nice vacation a year. So I have this side hustle. I need to pay for extracurricular classes for my kids, or sports or something like that. Or we really need a new car and our budget doesn't fit it. I need to get a side hustle, right? So we feel it necessary to justify the things that we want to buy, right? Rather than, I just would love to have more money to do things that I love to do. That's it. And so I want to tell you that there is a way for you to create more income to pay for the vacations you want, the extracurricular activities you want, the things, just things that you want to do or to have in life that you're struggling so hard by hustling right now. So a little bit about me. So my name is Lani Kim, and I'm a life coach. My background is in education, surprisingly, right? So I'm super excited to share basically this journey of mine and my passion for coaching, born through a very long journey of doing all these things. Well, maybe not all of these things, a lot of these things myself. And my husband's an educator too. And he spent our early years of our marriage trying these things too. And so in my personal life, I'm a mom, I'm a homeschooler, and I'm a life coach and wife. And I love anything wellness. I love fitness. I love learning about health, physical and mental, spiritual, all of it. I live in Southern California, and I have 3 kids, as a senior, soon to be flying the nest soon, and a freshman and a little second grader. And my background is I come from a science background. I have a degree in biology, and I went to UCSD in San Diego. And I was a science teacher at public school. And then I decided to homeschool my children. I was a homeschool consultant for many, many, many years. And that whole experience brought me to life coaching. And I fell in love with life coaching and decided that this is what I wanted to do. I felt like my whole life had prepped me to become a life coach. And along the way in my journey, um, I have definitely done some of these things. So I've done the MLMs, multiple MLMs, and they're a lot of fun. And um, I made what I would say is decent money. And it was enough to pay for the classes, to pay for the little extras. But it was a lot of work. And I was hustling. And at the end of the day, the free time that I had was spent on my hustle, and it wasn't enjoying basically the fruits of my labor. I had to tag team to take my kids to the extracurricular activities because some of the time I was working on my hustle, some of the time I was chaperoning my kids, or not chaperoning, shepherding, or um, driving my kids around to their different activities. And there was just so much busyness in my life. But the money was good enough that I didn't want to give it up. And at the time, I thought, this is just how it is. This is how I make that amount of money, that side amount of money, to be able to afford all these different things that we want in our life. And I've done the tutoring, and I've done the teaching other classes. What else have I done? MLMs took a lot. I've done so many. That was a big part of my journey. And so when I came through life coaching, it was actually for a life coach for myself in business because I was wanting to grow my educational consulting, or my homeschool consulting business. And the mindset shift was amazing for me on how to work less and make more. And I know that's something that we hear so often, right? Make less or make more with less amount of time, right? Or spend less time making more money. But really, that mindset shift allowed me to define what that looked like in my own life. I wasn't trying to copy someone else's business, but how did that look like in my own life? And that change was just amazing. And now my days aren't this long to-do list. That's actually one of the things that I learned to do, is constrain my list. Okay, so that was a bit about me, my background, and why I have such a passion for this. Okay, so I want to get into a little bit about the mindset of an educator. So as an educator, especially in the Western society, we are even given this title of paraprofessional. What's a paraprofessional? Right? It's kind of like I'm halfway in between. I'm kind of a professional. And that very much is such an illustration of the way that we as educators are taught, the way that society sees us, the way that we see ourselves. It's like we went to college, we got these degrees, and for a lot of educators, you have a master's or even a doctorate. Yet we are not given that title of professional. And so that sets us up for a lot of interesting ways to think about ourselves, what we do, and our value, and how that value is exchanged. And I'm going to get into a little bit about that. We are also taught that education is a right in our Western society, right? It's an entitlement. And so our expertise is viewed as a service we're obligated to give people, right? We're obligated to give our students. And this is very different, right? Kind of from the view that we put upon, say, for instance, doctors, right? Doctors, their services are seen as necessary, but a privilege, right? Educators, that is not how we're seen. In the end, we are taught to work for pennies, but we are constantly bombarded. We are constantly bombarded with this tagline of they don't make a lot of money, but they love what they do, right? And there's nothing wrong with loving what you do. And if you love what you do, that is such a blessing and a gift. But this doesn't need to be a paradox. You don't have to either make money or love what you do, right? You can make money and love what you do, right? So for K-12 teachers, we are very much indoctrinated with this idea. And so what it looks like is that you are paying for supplies out of your own pocket. And it's brushed off as, well, it's not a big deal, right? My students are going to love this. This job is not about the money. What does that create, right? That creates this idea that your worth is not translated into money. And so that is how we start to view ourselves. So when we're thinking of ways to create more income, it's really hard to do that because you've already had this mindset of the value that you have is not translated as money. For higher educators or higher people in higher education, so for like professors or adjunct faculty, what it looks like is trading prestige for money. So very often, it looks like you get a job at maybe a local university, and then you work your way up to being able to apply for a more prestigious university. And what happens is you actually a lot of times get paid less, or maybe if you're lucky, you get an even exchange, but they sell you on the prestige. And that prestige very often translates to prestige so you can get funding if you do research to do a research project, right? So then you could do that research project to write a book to make money. It's a very, it takes a lot of time investment to get there. And then it looks like in a couple of years, now you have more years teaching at a prestigious university, and then you want to go to a more prestigious university, right? And even when you say, okay, I'm exchanging a little less pay for prestige, but I'm going to make that up in the research that I do. But then that creates a whole cycle in itself, right? Because now you are beholden to the people who are funding you. And you're given this limited budget, and now you only can take from that limited budget. But in addition, that you now are trying to fulfill whatever research project that you're working on that is going to be largely dictated by the people who are funding you, right? So you're constantly under someone's thumb. And when you look at the money you gave up to move up, and it's called like trying to reach the ivory tower, if you ever heard of that phrase, and you're making less as a faculty so you can get more prestige, and then you're wanting to make up that money by doing research, but when you look at it at the end of the day, you're really not making a whole lot more money. And you are now you are now taking on two big responsibilities, and that's heavy. And it's this perpetual thing, and it's holding the carrot at the end of the string, and you're constantly trying to move forward towards it. But those that reach it are pretty rare. And you have given up sometimes decades at this point of your life to get this carrot. And what have you missed along the way? So that's what it looks like for people in higher education. Now, the other thing is, as educators, we very much have this mentality that it's almost like our ego tells us that we are above others because we don't make a lot of money. So again, this feeds into this mindset that the way that value is translated through us has nothing to do with money. And when you have that mindset, it's hard to make money. And then these ideas, a lot of these thoughts, this type of mindset is exactly what we call limiting beliefs, meaning that you believe that the way value is translated around you when it evolves you is not through money. And that the way you maintain your dignity, because you don't have like wealth in terms of monetary wealth, your wealth is in not making a lot of money because you do these, you are an educator, you serve students, right? And so when you're trying to make money, you are actually having to go against kind of like the grain of who you are. And that's really difficult. And so the other things that we encounter is trying to stay within the educational realm. And I'm not saying that what you do has to be completely out of the educational realm, but there are so many other ways to use your gifts and talents in education to create income. But we kind of go towards that list I talked about at the beginning of the webinar. It's like the go-to, right? It's like, these are the things I know. These are the things that work, and work by mean it makes a little bit of money, right? And so we go to these, right? And we love to stay in that educational realm because we have this ego of my value is not translated purely through money. It's through the way I serve people, how I make people feel. The gift of education that I give to them, I empower them with this education. Yet the ironic thing is we don't empower ourselves with our own education to make more money. And so as educators, the way I love to connect with people is understanding that your limiting beliefs is actually, that idea of limiting beliefs is something that you come across as an educator, maybe not on a daily basis, but a frequent basis, right? Because we see them in our students well, maybe not every day, like I said, but like you see the students who have these limiting beliefs on themselves, right? As in their ability to do well in your class, in school, in education, in life sometimes, right? And so it is our job, right, to help our students through these limiting beliefs, right, and create these breakthroughs that allows them to maybe not feel so dumb, not feel so out of place, right? And so what I encourage you is to take a look at that process and put it on yourself. And so these limiting beliefs, what it does in the educational realm is it creates a lack mindset, meaning we have this kind of paradoxical thing of like, the less people I serve, the better the service. And so I'm thinking of like classroom size, right? This is a huge, not huge, but it's a perennial topic that we talk about as educators, constantly this thing of, oh, I the less people I serve, the smaller my class size, right? Or we hear my kid goes to private school, they have a 15-to-1 ratio, right? That's why people love the idea of tutoring, because it's one-on-one. And so what it creates is, again, a limiting belief. And instead, the abundant mindset, right? Okay, so the lack mindset, sorry, back to that, is basically like you feel like you have to stick with a small group of people that you serve to create a lot of value. That very often will limit your income producing potential. An abundant mindset would say, how is it that the more people I serve, the better the service, right? And I think about Amazon. Amazon is born from the idea that the more people are served, the better the service, right? The reason Amazon can offer us 1 day shipping, and for me, I actually live close to a facility and I can get it the same day. Why? Because it serves so many people that it is now everywhere, right? We can do 1 day shipping because Amazon sends so many things that they can send it 1 day shipping, right? And so that is an example of abundant mindset. And then a lack mindset also is, like I said, sticking with that kind of list of typical things that educators do to make some side hustle money. An abundant mindset is thinking completely out of the box. And when I mean out of the box, I don't mean you have to create a whole new type of job or a whole different industry. What I mean is, how do you get outside of that list? Because that list is keeping you in that limited mindset. And there's a couple ways to look at this, right? So how do you grow your money is one question. And I say this as a general question because as educators, we have this idea that we don't really play with money, right? We use our money resourcefully. We might call it frugally. We don't always see that our money can work for us, right? And so what I mean by that is investments in whatever way works for you. So you can do the practical side of it, but you can also do the side that you love, right? And I would say the thought, I can create money with my thoughts, probably sounds really weird to you right now. And it probably sounds very unfamiliar, and it doesn't quite make sense to you. Your brain's having a lot of resistance to it. But literally, this thought is what can create that that income for you. I can create money with my thoughts. And I don't mean necessarily as a coach or like a therapist where you're just saying things out loud and that is the service that you give. But with anyone, right? So I think of inventors. They literally created something from their thoughts, right? When someone invents something, they're not thinking of what is already there. They're thinking of something that completely doesn't exist. It only exists in their mind. And so this mindset of how can I create, or I can create money with my thoughts is so powerful. Now, I'm not saying that try that on for size today and see where it takes you. Sometimes you have to build up to that thought. There's actually a way to build up your thoughts. Kind of like when you work out. I'm thinking of like running a marathon, right? And if you're not a runner, or if you're not like a long distance runner, you wouldn't probably just go run a marathon, right? You would put some training into it. to run maybe whatever it might look for you, like initially 3, 7, 12 miles, right? Something like that. Well, getting to the thought of I can create money with my thoughts sometimes takes starting at a thought that is more like I can create more income. Something a little less of a gap between where you are in your belief of your abilities to where you can be with your abilities. Or it might be I can think of 3 ways to make money right now. And so we call that laddering your thoughts. But ultimately, the thought I can create money with my thoughts is where you want to be. That is where it's all about you, your gifts, your talents, your abilities, your desires. What do you want? And that will allow you to break free from this rigid list of the ways that educators can make money. So how do I get out of this mindset, right? Of lack? How do I get into a mindset of abundance? Well, I would say educate yourself. Like, isn't that ironic, right? As educators, educate yourself. And what I mean is find what it is that you want and find a person that already does it and study them. And here's a tool that I would say in terms of what carries this through this process. And I'm not saying it's an easy process, right? One of the things I say is people are effective when they understand that things are simple, but not easy. Sometimes we conflate the two and we think that simple means easy. And it's not necessarily true. You can have a simple plan, but it doesn't always mean that it's easy to do. Now, this is different from hustle. Okay. Hustle usually involves a lot of time and a lot of exhaustion. Those two don't necessarily have to go together. And this is why mindset work is so powerful, because it's not in the doing, it's in your mindset, your thoughts. I'm not asking you to do a lot, but just to put your mind in a different mindset frame or different frame of mind. So here's what I wanted to talk about. Creating the desire for what you want, which is like, as an educator, like mind-blowing. Why? Because we work under so many constraints. We work through money constraints, resource constraints, the constraints of a curriculum that we're given, the constraints of time in the sense that, when we teach class, we're given a certain amount of time and we're supposed to impart a certain amount of information in that amount of time. And we are under the constraints of someone else's vision for the education that we're given, right? So if you work for a university or a school or any type of educational institute, they have their own vision, right? And sometimes they marry together, but sometimes they don't, right? And we have a slightly different vision of the institution that we're working for. And so we are under this other constraint. And so creating desire for what you want is just almost leaves us feeling like we're in the middle of an ocean and we're having to tread water. We don't exactly know where to go. And we're thinking like, how long do I need to do this? Because it's this idea of like, I don't even know what that means, right? Okay, so I'm going to actually break that down. So there's 3 parts to all of this. And there's willpower, there's motivation, and there's desire. And these are, I would say, almost like a tiered way of um, creating the energy to get to our goals. So the I would say, I don't even if you want to call it highest or lowest level, but like, so the lowest level in terms of where we want to be is willpower. And willpower is a very poor exchange of energy because the energy that you put in is not what you're getting back out. You get much less. And willpower is a limited resource. We only have so much we only have so much willpower. It is a limited resource, and we call this ego depletion. Once we run out of it, we don't have the ability to carry forth with whatever we were doing. And so that is the very lowest tier of where we want to work from. And the willpower that you put in, you do not get a fair exchange back out of it, because your willpower, the energy that goes into it, is always going to be higher than what you get back out of it. And the reason that we know this is true is because if there was a fair exchange, we would want to do whatever it is that we're wanting to, or we would just do whatever it is that we had set out to do, right? So for instance, exercise is probably the easiest one I can think of, right? So the willpower to exercise, right? If you're doing it purely out of willpower, telling yourself you need to, the reason that we know that exchange is not good, that we actually are putting in more energy, is because once that willpower runs out, we don't exercise anymore, right? And it ends. um, and so I kind of think of like if you have a science minded brain, like almost like physics, right? It's like friction. If you're working against friction, right? And when you push something, right, the more friction there is, right, the less the shorter the distance something can go, right? And so you are working in that mode, that mind frame. And so um, I think of the friction as the task you have to do. How much friction does it cost, right? And so your willpower, if we think of a surface and it has friction, and this is like the exercise, right? And we are willpowering our way over it. We can only go so far because there's friction there, right? And so we're having to overcome that friction. So we have to put more energy forth towards it. So willpower is the absolute lowest level in terms of like effectiveness. In terms of energy, it's the highest level. And in terms of return, the lowest level. Okay, so the next step is motivation. Motivation is great. And it's a term that we use very often because this is, as a society, kind of the way that we feel is the healthiest way to work from. So motivation is, you think of it like the rock at the top of the hill. You push it down, right? And it goes, right? That's the motivation that we're trying to create. However, motivation is also, okay, number one, it needs some kind of, oh my gosh, my terms are leaving my brain right now. It needs a catalyst, something to start it, right? Something to push it down the hill, like if you're thinking about the rock. It also runs out, right? And I don't mean run out like in terms of depletion, although there is that aspect, but more like here's downhill. And then what happens when you hit the, sorry, I have this little thing in the way. What happens when you hit the plateau, right? It can only go so far once it hits the like flat part of your motivation. And so it is longer lasting, but you still have to put energy into it. And very often you have to restart that process over and over again. But this is typically, like I said, the way that society feels the most healthy way to address or to take action from, right? Being motivated, right? And the reason we do this is because when we're talking to other people, we feel like we can actually help them with motivation, right? Like we can infuse some of our energy into somebody else, and that's going to give them that catalyst to have to push the rock down the hill and have that motivation to keep going, right? And so this is why we use that word motivation a lot, because we really feel like it's something we can impart to somebody else, or that someone else can look for. Like if we're talking to someone and we're saying you can find motivation, right? We think of it in a sense of like you can find someone to help you with that motivation or something to help you with that motivation. So the third level is desire. And this is really one that we're not taught a whole lot about. And if we are taught about desire, usually it's in a negative context, right? We really don't think of desire to do things from a positive connotation. It's usually in a negative connotation, right? Like desire is kind of this willy-nilly, like whatever just we want to do from our own desire, right? Kind of like this internal self um, um, self-focused idea, right? Desire is like this self-focused idea. We're not thinking about other people. So that's kind of the connotation that desire has. But, right, and I'll dispute that. But I really wanted to work on or put my attention on willpower, motivation, desire in terms of like creating the energy to do what you want. So desire in terms of energy is the lowest energy, or I would even say it's a no energy state of being, right? With a huge return. And so I'll give you an example. And this is why we think of desire in such a negative context, right? If we think of addiction, and usually, again, that's in a negative connotation, right? People have addictions purely out of desire, purely out of desire. Now, sometimes it might start from a healthy goal, but once you're in an addiction, what keeps you in the addiction is purely a desire for something, regardless of the consequences, right? So if we think of drug addiction, alcohol addiction, all these other types of addiction that become something that are harmful, it's purely from the sense of desire for whatever that is, for the drugs, for the alcohol. It's a very low energy process in terms of what energy carries you through that action, right? And so if you think about this as what are you going forward or toward to and away from? So when you have, I think of you standing in the middle. If you think of yourself as standing in the middle, and on each side, on one side are the things that you don't want, and the other side are the things that you do want. Willpower is basically moving towards or moving towards something you don't want, which is like the worst thing ever, right? Like exercise, I hate exercise, but I have to do it, right? And that has like a negative effect. Motivation has two parts to it. It is partially moving away from what you don't have and using that as a way to get to where you want to go. So it's like a two-part process. What you don't want pushes you towards what you do want. But in that is running away from something you don't want, or pulling away or allowing that to be part of the equation. And that is always going to have a factor of something that is unpleasant, right? The connotation in your mind, your mindset is I'm trying to leave something I don't want so I can get to what I do want, right? Desire has nothing to do with what you don't want. It's that the energy of trying to get away from what you don't want towards what you do want is not there. It's purely this draw towards what you want, right? It's just walking towards what you want, right? Whereas motivation is more like I'm running away from what I don't want so I can get to what I want, right? And we do this often, like if you're an educator, especially with young kids, right? We use this very often, like, okay, you need to sit on your square because you don't want to miss out on story time. And then you also want the treat at the end, right? It's just two-sided part of the equation. And the thing about a two-sided part of the equation is you're always going to have to kind of go back and forth to balance it. Desire is just not even an equation. It's just being drawn towards what you want. There is nothing having to push you towards it. There's nothing for you to run away from. And that is why it's such a low or no state of energy to come from desire. And it's not depleted. And so creating that level of energy for what it is that you want, or creating that level of energy, right? And energy, I mean like willpower, motivation, desire. What energy level are you in, I guess I should say, is so powerful. And it's not always done through like, here I am, I'm working through willpower. I just want to get to desire. So and very often it's a process, but it's a doable process. There is a process to get yourself working from willpower to motivation to desire. And sometimes you go from willpower to desire, right? It just depends on each individual person, and everyone has a different mindset and has different mindset shifts. But there is a way to work from willpower, if that's what you're using to get what you want, to understand what it's like to work from lower states of energy. Okay, so that one is one of the ones I say is so important in terms of getting out of desire. I mean, getting out of a mindset of a lack and into a mindset of abundance. Because abundance really is where you go towards with desire. You go towards abundance with desire. What is it that you want more of, right? Where his motivation will look like, I love teaching. So I'm going to tutor on the weekends because I love teaching so that I can pay for the vacation that we take every summer. That's motivation. Willpower is more like, well, I need to make more money. I have some students I can tutor. I'm just going to do it. I want, we take that vacation each year. I've got to make money somehow. I'll just do it. Like, yeah, I'll just do it. Right. So these are different, and that comes from lack, right? That comes from the lack mindset of I have to do something to get this goal, right? Versus I want to do something, right? And when you're wanting to do something and you truly want to do it, it's a whole different experience than having to do it. And so that tool is so important to get out of that like lack mindset, to get out of those constraints of how we see ourselves as educators. The other thing is that you can hire a coach. And the reason I hired a coach for myself was because I wanted faster results. I was tired of trying to figure it out all on my own, because the money that I saved at that moment did not translate to the future. Once I got a coach, I was able to even ask for more money for what I was doing. Just simply asking, not even adding more clients, just asking for more money. And in of itself, I was already making more money by that one step. And then understanding certain processes and how I could be more efficient. So I would say, think of investing in yourself to create more income in the same way you invested in your education. And that's where it's so interesting how people view hiring like a business coach, a life coach, whatever other type of coach it is. I mean, even a physical trainer, right? Or physical trainer, or fitness trainer, or personal trainer. Right. We are so hesitant to do these things because we keep thinking, especially as educators, we think we could just read and learn to do everything on our own, right? Or just do things and learn by trial and error. And really, that time and money at that moment is not going to serve us for the future. It's not teaching us how to create more income. It's just teaching us how to spend less in the moment. And you're going to stay in that mode, right? And if you're at this workshop, you've probably been in that mode for a while. So think of investing in your business in the same way you invested in your education. It's the same mindset if you allow it to be. And what I encourage you to do is, if this is completely new to you, is check out the website of Life Coach University. There are so many workshops on there and such an abundance of resources available to you. So thank you so much for your time today. And I wanted to go over if you, oops, how do I? If you are interested in my work, you can check me out on social media. On Instagram, it's Driving Life Coach. And if you have a specific question, or you want to say hi, or drop me a note on today's workshop, my email is lani@lanikim.com. And then I also wanted to talk about your experience here at Life Coach University. We only ask that you pay it forward in some type of act of kindness. And also, if you have been to a workshop before or after this workshop, let us know how this has manifested in your own life. You can email, you can see above, hello@lifecoachuniversity.com. And we love to hear back from you guys. That is what we love to hear, your testimonials, and part of what fuels us. um, and then definitely, like I said before, check out the future workshops. Each coach will usually be here once a month. So I'll be here next month, and I would love to have you back. And if you actually have any questions for future workshops that you'd love for me to answer, you can, oops, email me. And I would love to hear from you. And I would love to be able to include that in any future workshop. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here and allowing me to be part of your Saturday. Have a great weekend, and I hope to see you in the future. Take care.